There. Finally remembered to do that right up front. Okay. Okay, on the heart, the first page that I actually have is 563, shows general circulations, and definitely read that. The next page has nice diagrams and photographs that will be helpful to you. They're interesting no matter what, so please at least take a look at them. There's nothing really to outline on that page of pictures. The structure of the heart, yes, begin outlining again there. Skip the clinical application, although the clinical applications that pertain to the heart are usually quite interesting, and most people end up reading them anyhow. But you don't need to outline that. Layers of the heart wall, yes. Heart chambers, yes. Now you're coming into a series of diagrams which have lots and lots of labels, and you may not understand all of the labels. I would highlight those that I felt good about, and then as I felt better about some of the others, add more highlighting to it, or just put an X by it or something like that, because you will eventually know all of these terms. They're not difficult. Not nearly as difficult as trying to piece together origin, insertion, and action. Okay, next page is two more diagrams, again with multiple labels. Okay, highlight those that you feel comfortable with, or mentally highlight them if you feel comfortable with them. Those that you don't, just reserve those for later. Okay. The next page on heart valves, interesting, nothing really to outline there. So please do look at figure 19.6 just to look at it. Okay. And then when you pick up the reading again, it's on heart valves, and we do need to read that. Functions, sounds, and the next page is all application. So that can be skipped, although I'm sure you'll read it anyway. The pathway of blood through the heart is where you'll pick up again. Pathway of blood, yes. The diagram, flow through the heart, is very helpful. This particular one anyway. Some of the stuff on the internet is not helpful, not at all. So if you get the book behind you or the chapter behind you first before you try to supplement it with anything from the internet, I think you'll know what's worthwhile and what is not. So I'm still outlining at the back of the page where it says pathway of blood through the heart. Okay. Then I've got a clinical application to skip. Cardiac muscle tissue, yes. So I'm not saying no to too much yet. Mechanism of contraction. Okay. This is much more abbreviated than muscle contraction was for skeletal muscle. Okay. Then conducting system and innervation. Yes, for conducting system. And continue on till you get to blood supply to the heart. Okay. And do the outline for blood supply to the heart. It's short because on the next page it says disorders of the heart, and that's where you'll stop. You'll stop at disorders of the heart, coronary artery disease, heart failure, disorders of the conduction system, all things that everybody's interested in. So I have no doubt that most of you will actually take a look at that and probably absorb it as much as the rest of the chapter. Okay. Okay, so that's it for chapter 19 that is due on the 19th, coincidentally. Okay, and that's Monday night. 6 people, I think I just got one from someone. 5 people haven't turned me in an outline. Whether or not you're in the 110 class makes no difference if you're looking for the extra credit on the practicum. Okay, so there's a number of people who are showing themselves, a very small number of people who are showing themselves as not interested in the extra credit because they've missed multiple uh, outlines. And that's too bad because they'll also miss more multiple questions as we go along on the regular tests. But I'll still take them. Okay, any questions about the outlines? Do you think I'd read all those outlines?
I don't know. That seemed very time consuming.
Yeah.
At least skim through it.
Well, I looked to see what you, how you did your outline, just as I did on the very first one that you turned in. And I'm about ready to send out some signals to people that I think their outline is good, but more likely I'll send out signals I think their outline isn't going to be very helpful. Okay, the outlines that a couple of outlines that I'm getting, which are obviously cut and paste using vocabulary that nobody at our level understands. Okay, and then I can check it on the internet and I can find the exact article. So those aren't going to fly. Okay. Okay, any other questions? I want to go to the page then. I'll take over here. Okay. And we are recording, Nikki.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're at week 8. For the discussion topic, it's on muscles. This one is something you did for the bones. I want you to construct just simply a multiple choice question, suitable for, as you think anyway, for use on the practicum 2, the muscle practicum. Okay, and make it a multiple choice. If you can grab pictures from the internet that maybe have an outlined muscle, but it's not labeled, that would make it fairly easy for you and fairly good for us. I see there's already one submission. Okay, and yeah, good question. Okay, good question. Okay, about the discussions. Okay, I mean, there's certainly going to be more soon. I wasn't expecting to see any here yet. Do you think I'd read the discussions?
Probably go over them, maybe skim them.
I read almost every one. I don't know why I say almost every one, except some come in after I've read them. I try to insert 1 or 2 replies, and it's not to the person, it's to one of your discussion submissions that caught my interest or made me think of something that I want to tell everybody. So if you look back at the discussions, after you've done it, some people do, some people don't, but if you look back, you'll see I'm in there too, answering back to somebody else. One of the topics that came up and people were split down, not quite down the middle, but they were definitely on one side or the other, was the use of cats. And that was last week's discussion topic. And I was expecting more along the line that I don't like doing it. okay, rather than it's useless, okay. I got a lot saying that since we're online, it's useless. Well, it does actually have some use. One, it's acceptable because of the times. It's acceptable to other universities, colleges, nursing programs all across the country. And the course is not acceptable without some sort of dissection. So we have no choice in that. And you can still think it's useless. But I went over in my mind and on the sheets last night, and I looked at the cat muscles, and I looked at the human equivalents, mentally mostly. And there are, of the first 48 muscles, the most, I consider those the most important, but the rest will be on the test as well. I consider that out of the first 48 questions, there are only 5 muscles that the cat has that are significantly different than the human muscles. The muscles of the forearm are exactly the same. Most of the muscles of the leg are the same, but with the exception of the biceps femoris, for instance, and the gracilis and the sartorius. There's 3 of the 5 that I have in mind. But I think you can learn from both. You're required to learn from both anyway. Not well. I'm just going along with the party line. We have to do it. We have to do it in order to get you advanced. But there are most of the muscles that we do on the cat have a human equivalent. Okay, and it either looks the same or it definitely has the same function. One other one I thought of that didn't look the same, of course, is the pectoralis minor. Okay, so that's the 4th one I thought of, and you can probably think of enough to bring the list up to 7 or 8. But the rest of them, they all function. Okay, and you're welcome to add in or chime in or disagree. I don't know. You can't disagree with a fact, but if you don't think what I said is a fact, then you might want to disagree. Okay. The week 8 assignment, the assignment always refers to the outline. We just did that. So there it is, chapter 19, due by the 19th. We're going to have a lecture in a bit, and we don't have a lot of new lab material that I want to present today because I'm going to, on Thursday, present lab material on the heart, but that won't be for the upcoming practicum. So I'm going to sort of keep hands off on that today. Instead, I'm going to give you 2 short and sweet talks on the integumentary system and the circulatory system. The condensed muscle list, I dragged it down from week 7 because we're using it still. The muscles of the human and the cat, these were dragged down from last week. They're not new. Human muscle models, cat muscle slides, and additional terms, we dragged all of those down from upstairs. I put together another page for you because I agree with you that the arm muscles on the model, when it shows only the elbow, you can't even tell sometimes if which end the hand and wrist are on and which end the elbow is on. So it's hard to get the orientation. Somebody brought up that fact, and I absolutely agree. So I put this together to try to take care of that. So the arm and the leg is where we had our greatest problem. Okay, so now when we're looking at the arm from either the lateral or the medial side here, or actually this is the anterior side. If depending on how you're looking at it, here's the posterior side. The muscles are labeled, and you don't see the names of them except for the extensor pollicis, which I added in here. But I use the same numbers as on our lists. So if you look at our condensed list, number 6 is the subscapularis. Number 9 is the infraspinatus. Okay, and here you can go around the arm, and you may have to even here increase it a little bit. Okay, there's the pronator teres. This next one would be the flexor carpi radialis. This would be the palmaris longus, and this would be the flexor carpi ulnaris. Okay. For the leg, we did the same thing. This leg is from anterior view. Here's the knee. Right up the middle is the rectus femoris. On either side of it is the vastus medialis, vastus lateralis. Here's the sartorius. And number 36 is a portion of the adductor magnus. I could have used a little bit more electronic ink and pointed out that muscle right in there. What would that be? I'm asking you.
Which one? Again, sorry.
Right where the arrow is. Little tiny muscle right in the groin.
Oh,
It has a funny name.
Yeah. Okay,
it's
that's a good
sartorius?
answer.
It's not the sartorius, right?
It's
That'd
the
be the long one?
pectineus.
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 What's that long strip again? That's the sartorius.
What? I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little.
That long strip, 34.
Oh, yeah. The longest muscle in the body, the sartorius.
Perfect. That's what I got it confused with.
Okay. Looking at it from the side, we have covered up by fascia the gluteus medius. Here's the good old gluteus maximus. 31 can either be called the IT band or the tensor fascia lata. I think IT band is quite good enough. Now coming down, here's the biceps femoris. Now here's one muscle that is different looking on the cat. It's wider and flatter. Okay, and it's more on the side. This is more on the back here. Okay, and a little bit farther down the back, the gastrocnemius. On the other side, 45, and barely showing on this one, is the tibialis anterior. The soleus shows up nicely here. And if you're working off of a little phone, you might not see it very well. I can't work on a phone anyway. I try to enlarge something and, spread my fingers, and things just go all over the place. I can't type on one of those things. I couldn't send a text message if I wanted to. My fingers hit the wrong thing. Okay, so this was the soleus. This is the fibularis longus, 47. And 48 was the extensor digitorum longus. Over here, this is 38. We're looking at the opposite side of the leg. 38 is the semitendinosus, and underlying it is the semimembranosus. Here's the gracilis, and on either side, running underneath it, are parts of the adductor magnus. It can also be called adductor femoris, but adductor magnus is the preferred human term. On the posterior side, 37 and 38 make up these two exaggerated muscles in the upper thigh on the posterior side, the biceps femoris and the semitendinosus. Okay. And I've got something else over there, but I'm going to have to, there we go. Number 39 on each side and running underneath number 38. Running underneath the semitendinosus is the semimembranosus. And the gracilis is here as it was here. Okay, so that's all I have here at this length, but I think it really does show those muscles better, and you can get your orientation better. Okay. Okay, there is a, we won't go there, but there is a discussion topic for week 8 for Bio 110. So, well, why don't we go there? Just be sure I posted it already. It doesn't look like. No, I didn't. Okay, it'll be up tonight. I'm going to tell you about it, however. For Bio 110, I want you to create a test question again. A moment ago, I asked you to create any sort of test question, but this one I want a visual question. I want you to seek out on the internet a bodybuilder. I mean somebody with muscles that make you sick. They stick out so much. And I want you to either highlight a muscle. Now, this may take some figuring out how you can do that. One easy way is to, do you know the app on your, or at least on the computer called Snippet? You can get the picture, snip the picture, it comes out. I then throw it into PowerPoint and put my arrow on it, then I snip it again, and I got it. But there's other ways I'm sure that you can figure out as well. But I want you to give it a try. I want to get some bodybuilder, men and women, okay? And so that we can see the muscles. Okay. I'll put a sample up this evening also, so that if you're not sure what I want, well, it doesn't have to be what I want, but something close to it. Okay. Here's an example of the extra credit question type that you're going to get on Thursday. If you weren't here last Thursday, you may not know that we're having an extra credit test. Extra credit is just that. I don't go around advertising it. I don't have to give it, but I like to do it, especially over a weekend like we just had, to get you to study, okay? Because if you're like me, you'll procrastinate a little bit longer than you should, and then you have to cram, okay? So I only made up one question. And the question I had, question 1, and points to this muscle right here. And down here in shuffled order, you know, these questions do come up shuffled for everybody. I want to know the origin, insertion, and action. One of these four is the proper combination. So if you know that the action is wrong, it can't be that one. If you know that the origin is wrong, it can't be that one. You can do it by a process of elimination. But I was hoping, and I still am hoping, or hopeful that you'll do it because you know something about this muscle. Well, first you probably need to identify that muscle, but nowhere on the test, nowhere on the test question does it ask you to identify it. That's just something we have to do in our minds. What is that muscle?
Biceps femoris?
I think you got it, but try it again.
Biceps femoris?
No.
No.
Anterior
Uh,
tibialis.
what?
Oh,
Anterior
people- sorry.
It's hard when we're talking over each other.
Is it not the soles? No.
No, it's not the soleus. Well,
Is it the
Fibularis longus?
no.
Extensor digitorum longus?
That's here.
Oh,
Gonna do great.
No.
Tibialis anterior.
yeah.
Tibialis anterior. Okay, there's a couple of reasons you should have known that, or could have known that. Doesn't mean you should have. One, just by looking at it. Two, here's the tibia. Here's your shin. Remember I told you, touch your shin and then go laterally just one little bit till the soft muscle, and that's the tibialis anterior. The other thing is, of course, look at the diagrams some more. Do you need to know it for Thursday? Only if you hope to get some extra credit, okay? And of course you do. But if you don't get extra credit, does that hurt? No, no, no. It may hurt your pride. It's not going to hurt, okay? Because the test is a week after that. So if it shows you that you don't know very many of them come Thursday, well, yes, you'll miss out on the extra credit, but what you'll gain is the knowledge that you need to study some more. Okay. You seem, from the few people that answered at all, you seem to know the names of muscles. You pronounce them fairly well. You just got the name associated with the wrong person. Okay. There's only a few of you that I don't know what you look like, because when you send your stuff or whatever, it has your picture on it. And some of you just don't have your picture. Okay. Now, what's the answer? That is the tibialis anterior. It's going to come down. It's going to raise up the toes. It's going to dorsiflex. Can't plantar flex, that would be stand on tiptoes. Extend the knee. No, it can't extend the knee. Can it flex the knee? It has nothing to do with the knee. Okay, so you're down to one thing: dorsiflex and inverts the foot. Okay, and also if you look at the origin on the tibia, yes. On the fibula, that's way over here. No, I'm sorry, that's way over here. No. On the femur, that would be up here on the other side of the knee. On the ischium, on the butt, no way. Okay. I just picked out 4. So the correct answer has got to be that one. Now, I'm debating as to whether how many of these I have and how much time I give you. I told you it's not going to be long. You don't get much time. Right now, I'm thinking of having 10, just 10. And I'm having it so that you make your answer and move ahead to the next question, and you don't get to go back. And how much time? I'm going to take the test myself and read it like I didn't know it, and or needed to read it, taking a test. and I will determine the amount of time. I'm not going to give you enough time to make any mistakes. You won't be able to back up. Okay, this is an opportunity though to get up to 10 points. You'll have to just go straight through it and know it. If you trying to get the benefit of the condensed sheet, which of course you'll have there. If you go to it and to try to find the answer, you'll have wasted half your time. So do your best, okay? And it's meant to help you. And then submit the quiz. And look, I got one right. Here's the correct answer. Okay, two short topics. The integumentary system is short. The circulatory system is never ending, but the introduction into it is short. Okay, so we'll do the integumentary system, take a short break after that, and then come back and do the circulatory system. Now, I know you could be looking at this yourself instead of following me on the screen, but if you do that, I think we'll be all over the place. You someplace else, me here. So the integumentary system, that's the skin of the appendages. When we say appendages, we don't mean arms and legs, though. We mean hairs and nails. The skin itself, largest organ of the body. I can say that many, many times since a couple of people never catch on to that. It's the largest organ of the body. It's not a tissue. Functions of the skin? Well, you're familiar with all of these. Protect against abrasion. Actually, it's what becomes abraded. Protection from infection, very important. Burn victims often have to get special treatment to stop infection from occurring. Protection from desiccation, which is drying out. Okay, your skin has a lot of chemicals in it, especially one called keratin that acts sort of like a wax to keep the water on the inside. Of course, when you need to cool down, regulate your body temperature, water can exit through the pores and cool you off through sweating. And then the production of vitamin D. Okay. Do you take vitamin D, or do you think you get enough from the sunlight?
I have to take supplements.
Okay. I take them. I take that one anyway. And how much sunlight do you think you get on a regular day? Not when Jesus is down surfing at the beach. I'm not talking about that. Okay. How much sunlight do you get a day? Probably you're not getting any right now.
True.
Most people, it's the little bit of sun rays that hit them as they walk to their car. Once in the car, the UV light is lost from the windshields and windows, and then wherever you're going, get out and a little bit of sunlight. Okay. If you're out hiking, that's a different story. You'll get a lot more. But your body needs vitamin D to fight off cancer and quite a few other things. I never thought it was that important. I thought it was just something they put in milk for babies. But then babies don't drink milk as much. They drink formula, or they're given formula. So I questioned why vitamin D. And doctor told me. So
I
And he
heard
said,
all you need is like 10 minutes a day for my nutrition class.
that's what 10 minutes a day will do it. But I'd like to err on the side of more vitamin D uh, on that one. But yes, 10 minutes a day, I hear that too. You know, that's sort of, is that living? 10 minutes of sunlight?
Yeah, that's barely any. Like it's like 10 good minutes in the hot sun. I mean, you'll feel it, after like 5.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and then go hide for the rest of the 23 hours and 55 minutes. Huh? Okay. Uh, what other vitamin do you need? Well, I mean, we need a lot of vitamins, but one that people are often deficient in.
C and E.
Do you say B?
Oh no, C and E. I'm sorry.
Magnesium.
That's not a vitamin.
Is iron a vitamin?
No, it's a mineral.
Is it true that we can't produce our own vitamin C?
We can't.
We can or we cannot?
Cannot. So,
B12.
yeah, who got that one?
Dana did.
Dana did. Okay. B12. I'm deficient. I was deficient in B12. When they do one of these blood tests, complete things, they're looking for something. They're looking for anything. The doctors want to keep you alive until you really, really get sick, and they want to be there when that happens so that they can make all the money at the end. So, but
Right.
B12 has a great effect on your nervous system. My handwriting was getting scribblier, horrible. My handwriting was jerky, and I didn't know what was going on. I just accepted it, and doctor said B12. I took it, and the handwriting's back to normal. Everything's normal. Okay. Repeating. Skin, largest organ of the body, and it's divided into two main regions. The uppermost region of the skin is the region that you can touch. It's the epidermis, the outermost layer, and this layer that you can touch has a total of 5 layers within it. Okay, it's considered to be stratified squamous epithelium tissue. You don't need to know this. I'm putting it in here for later, but you'll need to know it for practicum 4 and lecture test 3. The uppermost layer, or outermost layer, same thing, is the stratum corneum. Stratum is just a layer. Corneum means cornified, has a lot of keratin in it. This upper layer can be 20 to 30 layers thick in itself, and it's your main protection against water loss. It's your main protection against abrasion. It has within it, and it's highlighted here, keratin, okay, to reduce the water loss. Now there is going to be a picture to putting all these together, so we'll work towards that picture. This is the uppermost layer. This outermost layer, the cells that flake off of you. The first one's off when you get a sunburn, for instance. The first one's off when you're running through the woods trying to get away from the bloodhounds. They smell the skin that you're losing all of the time. That's what they're going for. And these cells are flattened. Okay. The layer underneath is the stratum lucidum. This can range in thickness from a single layer of cells down to or up to 20 to 40 layers or even more. Under a microscope, you couldn't really tell the difference from the stratum corneum to when you moved into the stratum lucidum. They would look the same. But if you treat them histochemically, in other words, with a dye, you will find that the second layer doesn't have keratin. The second layer, the stratum lucidum, has elidin. Elidin is going to become keratin. All the cells deeper in your skin are pushing their way up to the surface. They'll go through these stages until they come out and they are stratum corneum. Hang in there until we get to the picture. Underneath that is the stratum granulosum. It's so named, and it doesn't say that here. It has what looked like granules inside of the cell under the microscope. Okay. This contains a chemical called hyalokeratin or keratohyalin, sort of a different arrangement of the same word. Hyalokeratin is good enough. Okay. And this chemical identifies this layer, the stratum granulosum. This hyalokeratin will eventually, as it moves towards the surface, as you lose cells, they're replaced, and everything moves up, and it will become elidin. And when it gets to the very uppermost layer, the stratum corneum, it will become keratin. Now below that is a layer called the stratum spinosum, so called because the cells that are next to each other often look like they have little crystalline spears or needles going from one cell into the next and holding things together. Okay. No particular chemical associated with these. Now, the first four layers, if we're counting from the outside, the stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, and the stratum basal. No, I'm sorry, and the stratum spinosum. Okay. The first four layers are all composed of dead cells. So when you touch yourself anywhere or touch somebody else, their skin, you're touching dead material. All of the epidermis, the outer four layers, are composed of dead cells. The dead cells are being sloughed off, scraped off, rubbed off all of the time. And if they're not replaced, we'd be a skeleton in no time. So they got to be replaced somehow. And that's the lowermost layer. That's the stratum basal, the stratum at the base, stratum basal. It's only one or two layers thick, but it is in constant division to replenish the cells above them as they're worn away. So the stratum basal will produce cells that become the stratum spinosum, and then produce more cells that push the stratum spinosum into the realm of the stratum granulosum, and then to the stratum lucidum and the stratum corneum. The epidermis is composed of these five layers, and it is avascular. There's no capillaries or bloods in here. The only one that needs anything anyway is going to be the stratum basal, because it's dividing, it's growing all of the time. The other layers are dead, hanging on. They have chemicals in them that are changing, becoming finally keratin to stop you from drying out. Okay. But there's no blood supply to the epidermis. If you get a paper cut, a little cut, and it doesn't bleed, you haven't gone through the epidermis. If you do get any blood on your skin, well, then you have gone through the epidermis to at least the dermis, which is right underneath it. Okay, now here's what we're looking at. Here's the base. We'll go the opposite direction this time. We'll start with the stratum basal. It's about 1 to 2 layers thick only, but the cells are large and they constantly divide. This layer is also called the stratum germinativum. Germinativum referring to the fact that they are the germ layer, the parent of all of the rest of the layers. As they divide and divide, they push the previously formed cells higher up. And here's the stratum spinosum. That gets pushed up into the stratum granulosum. And the diagram tries to show you the little granules. This layer has the chemical hyalokeratin in it. It's pushed up to the stratum lucidum. Look what's happening. The cells are flattening out from bottom to top. They're going to flatten out. The stratum lucidum, we said, could be anywhere from a couple layers thick to 20 to 40 layers thick. What thickens it if we have any extra work or abrasion or tension on any part of the body. So the fingertips, your fingertips, are thicker skinned than the palm of your hand. The soles of your feet are also going to be thicker. If you've ever worked digging with a shovel, for instance, or a rake, and got a callus develop on your hand, then you would develop the stratum lucidum layer. I once had a callus on one of my fingers of the right hand, and it was getting bigger and bigger. It even hurt a little bit, but I would not do anything to get rid of it. Nothing in the world. I was so proud of that callus because I got it playing Ms. Pac-Man. I had the highest score in Orange County for Ms. Pac-Man. I think it still stands. Okay. The stratum lucidum here, and the final layer, another layer of dead cells, but they accumulate. This is the stratum corneum, and it contains keratin. This is, and don't have to remember this now, so, so to lighten up, okay? This is stratified because it's many layers. This type of tissue, the epidermis, is stratified, squamous because it ends up flattened, epithelium because it's a covering or lining. In this case, it's a covering. Stratified squamous epithelium. We won't use that terminology until we get to the last two tests. Okay. The deeper layer of the skin is the dermis. The epidermis on top makes sense, and then the dermis. This dermis is vascularized. You will bleed if you cut into it. The dermis is considered to be dense, irregular connective tissue. Again, you won't need that now. And if you print these things out for yourself, you might put that in parentheses, but it tells you right there, you don't need it now. The dermis, again, is vascularized. It also contains sweat glands and oil glands. The dermis has another name, doesn't everything? The dermis is also called the corium. Sweat glands that are located within it, diagrams coming, The sweat glands are known as sudoriferous glands. Sudoriferous glands. Simply enough, though, their secretion is just called sweat. The diagram is going to show them as a mass of tubules. Here's the sweat gland, right here. Now they've called it sweat gland. I can call it sweat gland. I can also call it its other longer name, sudoriferous gland. It looks like a ball of yarn, except that the strand is hollow, and as fluid, sweat, enters into it, more and more cause it to go to the surface and exit through a pore. The sebaceous gland is located here. Here's another. Here's a piece of another. They're usually right around a hair. If you've lost your hair, you haven't lost your oil glands. They'll be around the pore that the hair exited through, or the shaft exited through. An oil gland is called a sebaceous gland. They secrete, obviously, an oily substance called sebum. It's not called oil technically, okay? And our examination, it will be called sebum. Just like synovial fluid of the joints, sebum doesn't have a defined, definite composition. It'll vary with your diet, with the time of year, quite a few different things. Okay, if you look at the top here, is this pink?
Yeah, the epidermis is
Yeah.
pink.
Thank you. Okay, the epidermis, thank you, is pink. And you see how it wavers here and actually follows down and goes back up. And the dermis is this layer down here. What they're calling subcutaneous tissue is here in yellow. And that's not a part of the dermis. If it were, it would have the appropriate color. This is the hypodermis. Hypodermis is fatty tissue. It does have arteries and veins in it, but hypodermis is not a part of the skin. It's below the skin. Epidermis and dermis make up the skin. Fortunately, we don't have 5 layers of types of epidermis like we do 5 types, of dermis, as we do have 5 types of the epidermis. A gland that secretes a fluid only is said to be merocrine. What secretes a fluid? The sweat gland, sudoriferous gland, secretes fluid only. Just fluid. If you look at it under the microscope, it's a fluid. I don't care what color it is, but just the fluid. This is a merocrine gland. There are 3 types of exocrine glands. Endocrine glands secrete hormones. Exocrine glands secrete other things. Could be water, could be enzymes. Here are the 3 types of exocrine glands. Exocrine glands have ducts. Exocrine glands secrete like saliva to a specific location. The salivary glands are exocrine glands. A merocrine gland, again I'm saying this, secretes fluid only. The best examples are the sweat gland, sudoriferous that we just saw, and the salivary glands. That's shown down here. This is a pocket in a sweat gland, and it's only secreting fluid. A holocrine gland, these secrete fluid, but also whole cells broken off from inside the lumen of the glandular duct. Here's the holocrine gland over here, and it will secrete fluid, but it's breaking off cells. They're dividing, and the whole cell departs as well. And the best example here is the oil gland or sebaceous gland. So you need to know the oil gland is holocrine gland. The apocrine gland is the third type of exocrine gland. Apocrine gland has in its secretion not only fluid, but broken pieces of cellular tissue. That's this one in the center. Holocrine has whole cells. Busted up cells exit through the apocrine gland. The best example here is the mammary gland, which is not a part of the lecture, of course, but just to identify the third type. The mammary gland, in secreting milk, secretes broken cells, partial cells and their contents. Repeating, the fatty layer below the dermis, hypodermis, not a part of the skin. Okay. As to the bonus quiz on Thursday, okay, I'm going to do the lecture first. It'll be on the circulatory system in the heart. And after I do that, then, but before I do the lab portion, that's when I'm going to do the quiz. I'll have you probably exit the Confer Zoom and just take the quiz on the Canvas page, okay, and then submit it, and then reestablish yourself on Confer Zoom again, okay, which will still be going at that time. Okay, so yeah, I don't want to lose people who just came for the quiz and didn't want to stay for anything else. Although you guys as groups don't seem to be that way. I've had groups in the past. Oh God, have I? And so first the lecture, then the quiz, and then come back and we'll have our lab, which is fortunately already prepared. Okay, anybody think of a question in the meantime here?
For that, like, for the discussion?
No. I asked, did anybody think of that? Does anybody want to ask me anything? That's it.
Oh, my bad.
Okay. Okay. Lee? Okay. Okay, I'm on today's other topic. It's the start of the circulatory system. Okay, functions of the circulatory system. Most of them, again, you're quite familiar with, so that's easy to run through these. Distribute oxygen to the body, okay, and then to the lungs for removal of carbon dioxide. Is that the only pair of gases that are involved? No. Other gases we mentioned the other day, ketones, can be lost. Anesthesia can be breathed away eventually. Lots of gases can be absorbed or removed. The circulatory system also distributes nutrients to the body, the entire body, and wastes to the kidneys and lungs. Hormones are distributed by the body. A lot of people forget that one. The hormones produced by the endocrine glands, they're picked up by the blood that passes through the endocrine gland itself and distributed throughout the entire body. Regulation of body temperature. If it's cold out, your vessels in the skin retract. In other words, the ones that are farthest away from the surface become more prominent. The ones that are close to the surface that would lose heat get very little supply. Clotting and the fighting of infection. Components, well, the heart, you're going to be reading about that. You'll have plenty of time, and we will definitely be doing that on Thursday in the laboratory. Next is arteries. People don't understand this, it seems. You got to say it a number of times. Arteries carry blood away from the heart and towards capillaries. Capillaries are being the smallest of the vessels. Okay, so anytime blood's moving away from the heart, and there's a set of capillaries up ahead in the tunnel of circulatory tissue. There's a set of capillaries to come. It's an artery. Okay. Two basic types of arteries: the muscular artery, and skipping partway down the page, the elastic artery. The muscular arteries, they're the most frequent in the body, by far the most frequent. Most arteries are muscular arteries. They have three layers in their cross section. The muscular artery is the middle diagram. Okay? And the inside of the muscular artery, cut in cross section here, touching the lumen where the blood would flow, is the tunica intima. Tunica intima. Okay, now it shows well in the print above, T intima, but in the diagram it's a little blurred. Okay, that's a thin layer lining the vessel itself. Behind that is the tunica media. Find it at about 10 o'clock in that middle diagram. The tunica media consists of smooth muscle, circular smooth muscle. And when it contracts, it helps move the blood forward. The outermost layer, find it about 4 o'clock on the middle diagram, is the tunica externa, or the outer layer. The tunica intima, the innermost layer, is also called the tunica interna. I tend to use tunica intima all the time. The elastic artery is shown on the first of the set of 3 diagrams here, and you immediately see it's thicker. Okay. It has a tunica intima, find it at 2 o'clock. It has a tunica media, find it at 10 o'clock, which is much thicker. And it has a tunica externa as well. The difference is it's thicker. Okay. Because it is thicker, it doesn't have the ability to get oxygen and nutrients from the blood that's passing through it. The smaller muscular arteries, and anything smaller than that, they pick up their oxygen and their nutrients from the blood passing through them. But here with the elastic artery, they're so thick that oxygen and nutrients can only make it part way. So you have to have some assistance. And that's called the vasa vasorum, last 2 words in the paragraph B. The vasa vasorum is a network of small capillaries inside the elastic artery wall. Okay, so it's not solid. It has the ability to transfer nutrients and oxygen and take away waste products by moving through the wall itself, the vasa vasorum. Since most arteries are muscular arteries, what are the elastic arteries even there for? Especially since they need this extra assistance. The elastic arteries are going to be found near the heart. These are large. These are the aorta. These are the pulmonary trunk. These are the pulmonary arteries. Okay? And the brachiocephalic artery, and don't worry that you don't know all of these vessels yet. Everybody's heard of the aorta. When blood pumps from the heart, from the left ventricle, into the ascending aorta, it's on its path to leave and go out into the body to all of the organs. Okay. It'll enter into the arterial system. So when the blood leaves the heart, it first enters into the aorta. The aorta is getting a sudden rush of blood, a sudden rush, because when the ventricles contract, they do so very forcefully and quickly. And so here's the aorta just hanging around between heartbeats, and the blood pumps into it very, very fast. It causes it to balloon. The aorta balloons. Oh, not like a 3, 4, 5 times or anything like that, its diameter, but maybe half again its diameter. It balloons. And then the aorta, after the contraction of the ventricle is over and the aorta isn't being pressed upon any longer, the aorta now is going to contract, try to get back to its normal size. And when it does that, the blood that is now joined in the aorta, there's more of it, it's got to go somewhere. It can't go back into the ventricle, because if it does, we've accomplished nothing. And if there's a valve there, the aortic semilunar valve that you'll learn about, to stop it. So if the excess blood cannot return to the heart, it's going to be forced to move forward as the elastic artery regains its shape. And just as it does that, boom, another burst of blood comes in, causes the elastic artery to enlarge. And then when that force stops for just a second, then the elastic artery contracts again and forces more blood along. Okay, sort of like a second heart chamber. Okay, the heart itself does most of the pumping, of course, but this gives it an edge here, helps it out. Arterioles. We use the term with the kidney. Okay. Arterioles, they're smaller arteries located inside of organs. If you have the aorta, it's going to go from the blood will go from the aorta. Maybe it'll go to the descending aorta. Maybe it'll go from there to the renal artery. These are all arteries of every one that I mentioned, including the aorta. These are arteries. They're not located inside of organs. But once the renal artery penetrates the kidney, then the vessels inside are properly called arterioles until they reach capillaries, and then their name will change. Arterioles then basically are inside of organs. Capillaries are the site of gas and nutrient exchange. These are very, very small vessels. They only have a tunica intima. They don't have a tunica media or tunica externa. So they don't have any ability, not having a tunica media, to push blood along. Blood moves through them only because of the pressure of the blood coming in behind them. Once blood passes through a set of capillaries, it usually is on its way back to the heart. There are two instances where that's not true. We'll talk about those in just a second. When blood is on its way back to the heart, it's in a vein or a venule. It's a venule if the returning blood is traveling through a vessel that is in an organ. Just like an arteriole is inside of an organ, a venule is inside of an organ. Okay. Veins, these are larger. These have emerged, such as the renal vein or the vena cava. Okay, they're not in organs. They're running between organs or between organs and the heart. Veins are vessels that carry blood away from capillaries and towards the heart. Now, as I said, without it being written here, we'll talk about it later, but I'll mention it now anyway. There are two places where after leaving a capillary, blood does not immediately return to the heart. One place is in the glomerulus, that's a capillary network. And once blood leaves that, okay, it will next go into the vasa recta. That's a second set of capillaries, and then go back to the heart. Okay, so that's one exception to the fast out, fast return. The other is in the lamina propria of the small intestine, where blood enters or gases exchange, but instead of going back to the heart, the lamina propria being capillaries, instead of going back to the heart, the blood now goes by way of the portal vein to the liver and goes through a set of capillaries in the liver. So in the hepatic portal system and in the renal system, there's two places then where blood has to go through two sets of capillaries before returning to the heart. Formed elements. Okay? Formed elements of the blood. If it's physical, if you can see it in a microscope, it's a formed element. One type of formed element that you can see is, of course, the red blood cell. These are about 7 micrometers in diameter, and they have a life expectancy of about 4 months. When they give up the ghost, when they're finished with, they're usually processed by the spleen and the liver to eliminate them. More are produced in the bone marrow. Enough are produced in a normal person to replace what we lose, and that is approximately 3 million red blood cells per second. And 3 million more have to be produced. Red blood cells do not have a nucleus. They're not capable of reproduction on their own. I've often tried to find a spot in on the internet or something where somebody explains to me how a red blood cell today differs from a red blood cell in 120 days. You know, what tears it apart? Haven't found that answer. White blood cells. White blood cells are also known as leukocytes. 5 major classes of white blood cells, but boy, if you get one of those charts in a classroom or even on the internet, you'll find that the different types of blood cells are broken up to a large, bewildering number. The first type are called granulocytes. Okay, a granulocyte is not the name of a particular white blood cell, but a group that have granules actually embedded inside of the cell. And you'll actually be able to see them under a microscope if they're stained appropriately. Most of these granules that you see inside of these white blood cells are histones. And they're released. God, somebody with hay fever unfortunately feels it. They're meant to help you. They're meant to protect you. But at the same time, if it can be good for you, but you don't have to like it. Okay, here's the first one. I've got a picture of it in a second. A neutrophil. The neutrophil is multi-lobed with 3 or more beads on a string in appearance. It's primarily acting as a defense against bacterial infection. Let's go down and see it. Here's the neutrophil. Neutrophil, this one has 4 lobes. It's multi-lobed. There are small granules in there. It won't go any higher. Okay. This is the neutrophil. Our first defense against infection once any infective agent gets inside of the circulatory system. The eosinophil. The eosinophil has a bilobed nucleus. Here it is here. I can see the granulation, but you may think it's imagination. Bilobed nucleus. The basophil has 2 small lobes at the end and a larger one in the center. I don't have a picture of it. you can look on the internet yourself, you'll find some offerings, but none of them are convincing. We've never seen in our classes a basophil. They're the rarest. I did have one person in the class who was a phlebotomist, a blood taker. And he's said he could find one, and he couldn't on our slides, but he's seen them. Anyway, it's the rarest type. It fights allergens, misspelled, I'm sorry, and it releases histones in defense. And this is the major cause of distress for a person who has hay fever and an allergen appears, because the basophil will try to destroy it, and it will release its own histones. Agranulocytes do not have the granules, typical. Okay, there are two types of agranulocytes, a monocyte and a lymphocyte. Here's the monocyte first. The monocyte has one large nucleus. It's the biggest of the white blood cells. Compare it to the size of the red blood cell next to it. Okay. Sometimes the monocyte nucleus fills up almost the entire cytoplasm. And if you were to rotate this, rotate it towards you this way, then this dark nuclear mass may cover everything and you don't see it all. Okay. It's there, but it's just the orientation that you're looking at. The monocyte, we have them all of the time, but they're especially prevalent if you have a recurring or chronic disease. That would be, for instance, TB or malaria. This is the lymphocyte. This is the other agranular white blood cell. Its nucleus in this picture or orientation is taking up its entire contents. But look how much smaller it is compared to this one. When it's only one solid nucleus, it's going to be a monocyte or a lymphocyte. Lymphocytes are able to change their shape, become amoeba-like. When they get to capillaries, they can actually stretch out, flatten out, and squeeze between the epidermal wall or the tunica intima of the capillary. Remember, the capillary only has a tunica intima, and it's thin. These guys can squeeze through. Why? Where are they going? They're going into the lymphatic system, which we'll talk about after we finish the circulatory system. What's not shown in any of these pictures are thrombocytes. Thrombocytes are also known as platelets. These are fragments of cells, and they're much important in clotting. We have these clotting agents, platelets, running around in us all the time. We don't want them to clot unnecessarily, however. If they clot unnecessarily, when you get a blood clot and it lodges, of course, in the heart or the lung especially, we have a real problem on our hands. So we don't want that to happen. I used to work at the Tragic Kingdom. That's what we called it. That's Disneyland. when we turned 18, the guys anyway, when you turned 18 years old, you went and got up, and the first place you went was where? Anybody?
I don't know. I'm not a
Voting poll.
guy.
Okay. Okay, you're not a guy. Okay, somebody who is.
The voting
You're not.
polls, the lotto. I don't know.
What? Say it. What was that? Lotto?
Yeah.
No, no, not quite. Uh, I'm getting tangled up here. Let me get untangled. Okay. No, you're not from my generation, obviously. Of course not. When I got up on my 18th birthday, I beat it immediately to the draft board. I had to sign up for the draft. And then, after doing that, I went immediately again to Disneyland to apply for a job. Disneyland wouldn't consider hiring you if you had not registered for the draft. So you had to be 18. Unfortunately, I got a job. And lots of stories about that place. But one comes to mind, which is not a funny story at all, about thrombocytes here. When rides used to open up, we got on the rides for free. Not quite free, because we had to give up our lunch pass, and we didn't get to have lunch that day, and they would normally have paid for that. But we got to go, and when Space Mountain opened up, I was right there. So were a lot of other people, but I watched as when you go into Space Mountain, there's a staging area. And this one woman got into one of the cars with another person, and they took off. And before I could actually get up to the front of the line, their car came back, and she was passed out, completely passed out. Turned out she had a stroke, dislodged a blood clot, and she had a stroke because of that. Then, as typical for Disneyland, they pull the car to the side, and they're going to get her out, and they screwed up, and they sent the car through again through Space Mountain, and she died. Well, that was Disneyland.
So Disneyland was not the happiest place on earth.
Oh, no way. No, 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 no. It was being overrun by the little good fellas, you know, the Italian mafia good fellas. My boss was Victor Scaya, and his brother worked there at another food stand, Ray Catapano, and Ray Tucci, and Frank Stabile. And they came around and they collected the union dues and put it right in their pocket. And you didn't say a damn word. That was funny. Okay. Now, okay, so thrombocytes, we have them all the time. We don't want to stimulate them to coagulate unless we have a cut. If we have a cut, the combination of air and the fluid leaving as well, and the chemical fibrinogen in your blood, also traveling around all the time, it converts to fibrin. So you'll have fibrin, you'll have air, and you'll have platelets, and you have the perfect setup for a small blood clot to stop you from bleeding. Non-formed elements. Non-formed elements. The thrombocyte is the formed element. A non-formed element, that's the fluid portion of the blood. Okay. Plasma. If the fluid portion of the blood, it is the fluid portion of the blood when all the formed elements have been removed. How do you do that? Well, centrifugation. You can spin them out. And so when you only have the fluid portion, that's plasma. You can also filter them out as well and get the plasma. Okay. Plasma is much more valuable than blood in transfusions and in storage, but it doesn't last forever. And one of the reasons the plasma can be improved upon is that if you get the fibrinogen out of it, fibrinogen is still in plasma. Okay. The clotting agent is still there. We don't, would prefer it not to be. And that can be either filtered or centrifuged out, but it's a longer process. If you remove the fibrinogen and the formed elements from the plasma, you have serum. Okay, the fluid portion of the blood when all formed elements and fibrinogen are removed. And it can be stored the longest. Unfortunately, but necessarily, most of the blood that people give is tossed out eventually. Well, that's good because that means not enough people needed it. Okay, or we had more than we needed. That's good, but nobody likes to think that their blood was tossed out. You know. Some additional terms, okay, and we'll be going over all of these. Systemic circulation through the system of the body. It would begin at the heart, to the aorta, to the artery, to the arteriole, to the capillary. Just exactly what we said a moment ago. Coming back through the venule, to the vein, vena cava, and the heart. Pulmonary circulation is to the lungs and back from the heart. So we start with the heart and we exit by the pulmonary trunk and then go to the lungs and then come back with the pulmonary veins and then the heart. Fetal circulation we'll be going over soon. Just a circulatory pathway in the fetus, which we have before we're born. The hepatic portal system, very important. The lamina propria of the small intestine is where we first exchange gases and nutrients. And then we go to the hepatic portal vein, and then to the liver, and then out through the vena cava, inferior vena cava, and back to the heart. Okay. At this point, like I said, I'm going to, I'll probably take about 5-minute break this time. And anybody that wishes can ask me to go through the cat muscles, the human muscles, both, everything. I'll do it faster than before, thinking that you're catching on. You can slow me down if you have to. Okay? So I'll see who's still here in about 5 minutes and give you a chance to slip out if you want to. Okay, don't forget the bonus quiz on on Thursday. You're going to think that that doesn't take long. That thing takes forever to do, to set up. Making those quizzes, I don't know. But you get into a routine, then you get hypnotized and it's enjoyable finally. Okay. So I hope you do well. By the way, on that quiz, don't expect to get 10. You know, just expect to get as many as you can. And I'd say you probably, if you got 4 and you're thinking, oh, that's not good. I could have guessed it too. If there's 4 answers, just by guessing, I'd get 2. So I only got 4. I only got 2 on my own. So what? It's 4 points. It's 4 points. That's it. Okay, now if you get all 10, not only if you get all 10 are you doing well on that quiz, you're going to do well on the practical too. So the better you can do on it, the better it will be. Although I have seen people not seemingly knowing anything a week ahead of time. And then we come to the practicum and then they have, they finally learn it. Because fear is the best teacher. And they waited long enough to get afeared. Okay, I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Excuse me.
Yep.
I think in the new human model, labeled human model, there is a mislabeled on forearm number 14 and 15.
Okay. We'll see it. Let
I
me get
think
to it.
14 must be.
I need to get to it first.
Oh, sorry.
And
Okay.
then you can, you tell me. Okay, Sudabay?
Yes.
Yep. I've got I'm on week 8. Can you tell me which one?
The one that you on week 8, the labeled human models, new one.
New. This one?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong, but
Well, we'll
want
find
to
out.
make sure. Yeah.
I just did this one. So I sure hope I did it right. Okay, now, is this part
Number
of,
14 and 15 forearm.
okay.
I think the middle one must be 14 and the
Yes, you're right.
side. Oh, okay.
You're right. I don't know how they got reversed. Okay.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay,
No,
thank you.
is that the only two?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, well, that's
Thank you.
awful.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll get it fixed. Okay, what's your pleasure? What do you feel weakest at? Don't say everything. Okay.
I struggle with the lower legs.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, on the human or the cat or both?
The human.
Okay. Let me go back to the screen. Now I did have I was just shown that I had a mistake on the lower leg. No, it was on the hand. Okay, so we're fine with that. Okay. Can show it several different places. See, these are the models that were causing some people confusion because they didn't know what the orientation was, up, down, right, left. But these are the ones I hope I took care of when I put that new page in. However, Sudabay just pointed out that there's 2 arrows that are interchanged, and I have to fix that. Okay, and that's the first thing I'll do when we quit for the day. Let me get to the leg. The leg is not as bad. Okay. Lower leg, you probably mean down here. or not? Ryan?
Yeah, right there is normally.
Okay. Well, at the back of your leg, which you would call your calf, the largest muscle is number 44, and it's a two-headed muscle. It's the gastrocnemius. It sits on top of one other muscle that is called the soleus. Okay. I was having physical therapy last Christmas time for my back, and the physical therapy has changed since I had it done 10 years ago, and it worked wonderfully, wonderfully. So my back is fine. But then the physical therapist decided that I should turn my foot this way, that way, and move a certain way to stretch the soleus muscle and the gastrocnemius. And I have now had to go to a orthopedic surgeon. God, I mean, try to do right, you know. I know she knows she did it too. Okay, so here's gastrocnemius. Here's soleus. You can see this definition between the two. Okay, these are towards the back compartment, as we call it, of the leg, and this is the front compartment here. This is on the most lateral side. In fact, we're looking only at the lateral side. We'll not look at the medial side of the leg. Okay, so don't worry about studying the medial side if you find it. This is the fibularis longus. Now you can't see that one unless we rotate up. Okay. This was the gastrocnemius back here. Here's the soleus. And here's that fibularis longus. And leaves us with two more. This is the extensor digitorum longus, which dorsiflexes the toes to the sky. And here's the tibialis anterior. I'm trying to stick to the lower leg for just a moment. No, there's not going to be that had them all. Those are all the muscles of the lower leg. Okay.
That helps, so thank you.
Okay. Remember, all these numbers always correspond to our sheet. Okay, you're not saying anything much, so I'm going to just go through it. Okay. This muscle, trapezius, the whole thing. Off to the side here, the latissimus dorsi. Its insertion fools a lot of people. It's on the humerus, on the humerus, latissimus dorsi. This set here is not labeled. It's labeled elsewhere, but this is the serratus anterior. The rhomboides. This is also rhomboides, major and minor. You just know it by rhomboides. 8, supraspinatus. 9, infraspinatus, part of the rotator cuff muscle group. We've just seen these. The rectus abdominis, This is the internal oblique. The external oblique are on the other side, and didn't get included, I guess. Here's the internal oblique. The lines go up and towards the middle. Striations. This is the transverse abdominis. The lines go roughly straight across. Two that should be easy. Pectoralis major and pectoralis minor. Your first job is always, can you identify the muscle? If you can identify the muscle, although it's not maybe the best way, the rest of it can just be sit down someplace and memorize the OI and A. Okay, now I've got a better one of these, as I said, but I'll quickly go through it anyway. This is the forearm, and I hope you recognize that this is the flexor side. Look here, a little bit of the white flexor retinaculatum showing. We're definitely looking for this. This part here comes together right in the middle. That's the palmaris longus. Now we can back over to the other side. This is the flexor carpi ulnaris. Well, how do I know that? Okay, I'm not trying to make a game out of this, but sometimes it helps. I'm looking ahead to this guy. This short one is going to be the pronator teres. Okay, if that's going to be the pronator teres, this is going to be the flexor carpi radialis. That's going to be the flexor carpi ulnaris. Here's that pronator teres. We're just rotating the arm around now. This is the brachioradialis. Brachioradialis is here and here. And these two muscles actually are a pair. They belong to each other. This is the extensor carpi radialis. You're now on the thumb side. The one next is going to go to all of the digits. It shows better here. When you take the test, if I were going to ask that muscle, I would not ask it off of that slide. I would ask it off of this slide or this model. So you can see that it goes out to all the digits. This is the extensor communis. This is the extensor retinaculatum. Number 20 is the extensor minimi, or the extensor communis minimi. 21, not a good picture. I wouldn't ask it on a slide, but let's do it anyway. It's the extensor carpi ulnaris. So let's hope we got a better shot of it someplace coming up. It does show that it's got two heads. We saw two heads here. These are both carpi muscles. Extensor carpi radialis, extensor carpi ulnaris. All carpi muscles have two heads, two parts. Here's our biceps. Not nearly as big as we think, because here is, no, it's not, I'm sorry. That's why it isn't. This one is the brachialis. I couldn't ask you that on this one, because here's the biceps, here's the brachialis. It's, I think, too difficult to distinguish. unless of course you memorize the numbers, but that won't do you any good on the test because there aren't going to be any numbers. Okay. But we can see the triceps. Now, here's the biceps. You can see the two heads. This is the elbow. This is the biceps brachii. Then underneath it and lateral, the brachialis. Deltoid and supra and infraspinatus. This muscle here is the teres minor, not labeled here. The teres minor, the two spinatus muscles. So teres minor, infraspinatus, supraspinatus, and on the other side, the subscapularis, they make up the rotator cuff. Okay. On the leg, gluteus maximus. Underneath the fascia, we have the gluteus medius, the IT band. This muscle is the biceps femoris. These are the two sort of on the back. And this is the semitendinosus, these two. Along with the semitendinosus and the biceps femoris, one other muscle, which I know we have because I saw it earlier, is the semimembranosus. And those three together make up the hamstrings. The hamstrings. We just did that. We just did that. The longest muscle in the body. This person standing looking towards you. Okay, so here's the crotch right here. Okay, this is the gracilis unlabeled. This is the sartorius. This is the vastus medialis. Vastus lateralis is creeping in here. This muscle would be better shown to you from the front. Okay. This is one half of it, the other half comes right down to the knee. This is the rectus femoris. Here was our IT band again. It covers the vastus lateralis. Here is the rectus femoris again, coming down to the knee. Gluteus medius, gluteus maximus. This is just a snippet from a previous one. Okay, now, here's the biceps femoris, semitendinosus, and here is the semimembranosus. Those are the hamstrings. If you pull a hamstring, it means to pull it off of the ischial tuberosity that it's attached to. 36, well, you don't have the numbers memorized, so I wouldn't expect you to get that necessarily, but it's the adductor magnus. This long one is the sartorius. Now, from this direction, yes, here is the gracilis, here is the adductor magnus, Here's the semimembranosus. Well, these are labeled, so just read them. And the sartorius. We've already done these, except this is a much better serratus anterior. The masseter, an upright muscle. The sternomastoid or sternomastoideus. The sternohyoid. And underneath are the digastric and the mylohyoid. And I have a better slide, which I have shown you, so it's on here someplace, of those two. This is the teres minor. This is the teres major. The teres minor is attached to the infraspinatus. There's the supraspinatus above the spine there. The teres major is not part of the rotator cuff. In fact, it also inserts on the humerus to pull it back. A synergist of the teres major would be best picked out as the latissimus dorsi. Latissimus dorsi and teres major are synergists. Oh, this one's just trying to show the location of the pectineus. This is the psoas major. The extensor pollicis, or hitchhiker's muscle for the thumb. This is the extensor reticulatum. And the flexor reticulatum. No particular order. Frontalis, also known as epicranium. Orbicularis oculi. Too many people go too fast and they write oris instead. Now that's the mouth. Oculi for optical. Orbicularis oculi. Here's the zygomaticus. Here's the cut masseter. On the other side, we have the temporalis, the buccinator, the lip is the orbicularis oris, the levator, I don't mind you just calling it levator actually. It's on the eye. This is the superior rectus. This is going to be the medial rectus. The others don't show till we get to here. Here's the superior rectus. Here's the lateral rectus, medial rectus, I'm sorry. Medial rectus. The inferior rectus. The lateral rectus would extend from here back. This muscle is the superior oblique. The inferior oblique is this muscle down here. And you barely see it in the shadow under here. Goes under, around the eye. And that's the inferior oblique. The superior and inferior obliques both abduct the eye, but the superior oblique also turns the eye down, and the inferior oblique, just the opposite, turns the eye up. Here we have the external intercostal and internal. Everybody gets the external intercostal correct as far as its function, which is to raise the ribs or for inhalation. But so many people miss the function of the internal intercostal. So let's take care of that this time and say that it is for forced exhalation. In other words, to force the air out, get it out of there fast. Okay. We need to do both. So here we go. The numbers are the same, of course. This, and this are the trapezius. If you want to stop, just say so on anything. Number 2, latissimus dorsi on the calf. And the vent-like looking muscles are the rhomboides. Number 2 has been pushed aside now. And number 3 is showing. It's a nice set of serratus anterior. Parts 7, there's 3 parts, are the 3 parts of the deltoid. And deltoid is a suitable answer for any of them. This unlabeled is the triceps, and as you move forward and leave the triceps, the next muscle right here is going to be the brachialis. We'll see it better in a moment. Pectoralis major, pectoralis minor. This is a muscle you don't need to be concerned with, the xiphohumerales. Uncovered here, 11, the biceps brachii. On top of the scapula, we have the supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and now it's labeled one of the heads of the triceps. This is the second head. 12 is still the brachialis, right next to the triceps. And this 7 here is one of the deltoids, the clavodeltoid. Okay. With this, we can see the orientation right over on the underside of the hand. Okay, the broad, flat muscle going right up the center is the palmaris longus. Okay. The thumb we'll be able to see, but it's definitely here. So this side is the flexor carpi ulnaris. On the other side of the palmaris longus is the flexor carpi radialis. So the 2 flexor carpis are on both sides here. And although it may look like one muscle, if you had it in front of you, you would easily separate it into 2 parts. All carpi muscles have two parts. 14 is again the palmaris longus. 15 is again the extensor carpi, flexor carpi radialis. And now 16, that little half muscle, is the pronator teres. Okay, the cat's now prone. So this muscle that's been lifted is the brachioradialis. The muscle below it is the two-headed extensor carpi radialis. And then this muscle is the extensor digitorum communis, or extensor digitorum. This is the extensor carpi radialis again. No, I'm sorry. That's the communis. That's extensor digitorum communis. Okay, you can see it because here's the brachioradialis. Here's the muscle underneath it, and it's not labeled. That's the extensor carpi radialis, extensor digitorum communis, extensor digitorum minimi, and the last one is the extensor digitor carpi ulnaris. If I messed that one up. Extensor carpi ulnaris. Muscle to close the mouth, the masseter. Underneath the mouth, these two muscles, these are the digastricus. This muscle is the sternohyoid. 23 is pointing to here. That's the mylohyoideus. And here's the large sternomastoid, or sternomastoideus. This is the external oblique. Here, the striations, if you can see them, are going downward. Downward. Whereas in the internal oblique, they come upward. The transverse abdominis and the rectus abdominis. The probe is holding up the IT band off of this muscle number 40, which is the vastus lateralis. Back here is the biceps femoris. The gluteus medius is here, going partially underneath the gluteus maximus. This is the sartorius. It's been cut, but not pulled back yet. On this side, okay, this is the gracilis. What I was looking at is this up here. You know, does it flop down here? They got the wrong muscle labeled? No, they've got it correct. This is the gracilis. The gracilis and the sartorius cover the upper inner thigh. In a roughly triangular shape here, this is the adductor magnus. This little piece is the pectineus, not labeled. 37 was the biceps femoris on the lateral side of the leg. Coming around now is the semitendinosus. We have two parts here of the hamstrings. Okay, take this one apart easily. Number 35, the muscle's been cut and cut. And this is the gracilis. The gracilis been lifted out of the way. Down here should be or would be number 39, the semimembranosus. Oh, that is 39, isn't it? That looks like an 8. I was thinking, no, why did they pin the semitendinosus on this side? That's a 9, and it pins here. Okay, on the more lateral side of the leg, pull back the sartorius, that's this piece, and this piece, number 34. There's a large muscle inside, which has been bisected. This is the rectus femoris. And then more medial is the vastus medialis. Over on this side to here, this is the semimembranosus. And then, although it's not labeled, from here, this triangle is the adductor magnus. This 43 is to show that cord-like muscle again that was bisected, the rectus femoris. Somebody was trying to show 42, which we're not going to do. Okay, it does not show well there anyway. Gastrocnemius on the back. On the front, next to the tibia or shin, this is the tibialis anterior. This next muscle is the extensor digitorum longus. This is a nice one. Okay. Here's the unlabeled gastrocnemius, soleus underneath it, then a long straight tibialis, I'm sorry, fibularis longus, fibularis longus. This number 48 is right into here. This is the extensor digitorum longus. The tibialis anterior is not labeled, it's here. Okay, what else can I do?
That
I
was,
think that was pretty good. Sorry.
yeah, no, I agree.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Bye, Charlie. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Have a good evening, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, oh, Tyler, no, wrong person. Okay, yes, have a good evening.
Thank you, Charlie. Bye.
Bye-bye.